Hello. We are going to be reading chapters 13 and 14 for Clayton Byrd. And the chapter starts on page 67. We're going to be reading The Plan. Clayton Byrd went to bed that night with a lot of anger, but also with a plan. He thrashed about, kicking the covers away. He was too angry to hear the music in his mind that had put him to sleep for the past 2 weeks since Cool Papa died. He was too angry to close his eyes to hear the sweet, sleepy melody of their last midnight jam. Clayton didn't want to imagine the sounds of his blues harp. He wanted to hold his blues harp and sink it down between his lips while he savored those notes and chords. But his blues harp might as well have been an ocean away. All he could hear was the sound of a drawer slamming over and over. So he came up with a plan as he lay in the dark. He repeated the steps of his plan, his eyes on the window left ajar, as the sheer blue curtain swayed. Soon it would be too chilly to keep the windows cracked open, but Clayton was so hot, so angry his skin hurt. The cool air wafted into Clayton's room was a good thing, perhaps the only thing that night, for along with the steps of the plan ran all the thoughts he held on to about his mother, none of them good, not a one. All he knew for the moment was the plan, and that she would be sorry that she had taken everything away from him, everything that was rightfully his. In the morning, his mother said, "I'm only doing what's best for you." Clayton gave her a vacant look. He drank his milk, took 2 bites of his toast, chewed, swallowed, and stuffed the rest in his mouth. "Keep it up," his mother said. "Or what?" His mouth was full of toast. She already had his blues harp. What else could she take? Clayton didn't care. Clayton had a plan. Miss Byrd was exhausted by Clayton. She took a moment before she spoke. "You're not a teenager yet, so stop trying my patience." She handed him an envelope. "Give this to your teacher. I can't come running to the school if you decide to fall asleep in class. There's nothing wrong with you, so stop creating problems where there are no problems. You're fine, Clayton." He took the envelope and bent down to put it in his considerably lightened book bag. He kept the book bag at his feet, almost under the table so his mother wouldn't notice its sunken-in shape. She would discover his textbooks, calculator, and pencil case under his bed later. The school bus honked and Clayton said, "Bye." Clayton and Omar boarded the bus, and the bus lurched forward. Then one voice said, "Yo, sleepsta!" And the other voices joined in. It took only one person to start things. The driver stopped the bus. "If I hear one more sleepster, I'll turn this bus around and the troublemakers can all go back home. Let's see how you like it when you walk to school." No one seemed worried about the bus driver's threat. Clayton knew that the bus driver couldn't kick anyone off the bus. The last driver who had ordered a foul-mouthed kid off the bus had been fired. Nonetheless, the noisiness quieted down. As soon as the bus driver restarted the engine, someone shouted, "Sleepster!" in a high-pitched, funny voice. Even Clayton laughed. Then, for the rest of the ride, the rowdier kid snored loudly. Clayton joined them. Omar slugged him in the shoulder, the way friends do. The bus pulled up to the front of the school, taking its place behind in a line of unloading school buses. Clayton, Omar, and the other kids got off the bus to join the mob of kids waiting to enter the building. Clayton and Omar neared the entrance. "Dang, no pen." "Take one of mine," Omar offered. "That's all right, man. I'll run across the street. Pick one up," Clayton said. "You'll be late." "I'll run fast," Clayton said, and he took off toward the bodega. Once inside, he stood near the door and watched Omar disappear into the school. He went to the counter and said, "MetroCard," as cool as he could. He put his $10 bill, his cut from paying with Cool Papa and the Bluesman, on the counter. The store clerk, who didn't give Clayton a second glance, smacked the MetroCard down on the counter. It was 7:45, and the plan was in action. Clayton avoided the main streets and began the 3/4-mile hike to his house. His mother should have been on her way to work, creeping along on the expressway in her car. Still, Clayton took a deep, careful breath when he turned the corner onto his block. He saw what he expected to see, an empty driveway. He exhaled, ran to the side door, let himself in with his key, and ran up the stairs. So far, so good. He opened his mother's bedroom door carefully, as if she might still be there. But he was alone, and now to find his blues harp. He opened drawer after drawer of her highboy, 6 drawers of silky things, under things that belonged to his mother. It was when he pulled on the highest drawer that he knew. He should have known to begin with. The highest drawer was a hiding drawer to keep something away from a kid. But though Clayton was a kid, he was tall enough to get what he needed from the top drawer without having to stand on anything. He was sure he'd be able to look his mother straight in the eye in another year. After all, his mother wasn't growing any taller, but he could feel himself inching up. His hand found the candy bar-shaped metal instantly. He wiped it clean of the silky, girly things it had been smothered by, and then he sank it in his mouth to slick it up. Then he blew into all the holes, sliding upwards, and drew in the air to slide back down. He went inside his room, opened the closet, and grabbed the pork pie hat. He took the rest of his money, $17 in bills, folded them, and zipped up the cash in his book bag. He ran down the stairs, threw a peanut butter cracker snack into the nearly empty book bag, tucked his Metro card in his pants pocket, stuffed his silver blues harp in his jacket pocket, and put the pork pie hat on his head. He was about to run out the back door, but he stopped, turned. He walked to the dining room table. He picked up the glass salt shaker, the angel with the glued-on wing. He put it on the floor, raised his right foot, and smashed it. Then he left. Clayton Byrd Goes Underground is our second chapter today. Clayton trotted happily, sneakily down the concrete steel steps of the subway station. He paid his fare, pushed his slim body against the turnstile bar, and embarked on his adventure. He chuckled to himself. Glee wasn't a song from Miss Treadwell's great American book of Glee. Glee was being on the lam, making a great escape. Each level of steps in Clayton's descent took him farther below street level until Clayton Byrd was truly underground. He had never noticed the grunge of the platform before. When he and Cole Papa snuck off to the city to meet up with the bluesmen on double shift nights, he was just blind to it all. Now, as he stood alone, the smoke-dulled wall tiles, the overspilling garbage cans, the blackened, gummy ground, and the stale air were not enough to warn him away. He didn't notice the grime and the dirt, or the long, brawny rats running across the track. He was too elated by the success of his plan. The details of what were to follow was hazy at best, details such as food, drink, change of clothing, a place to sleep, and needing more than $17 squirreled away in the zipper pouch of his book bag. All of those details would work themselves out when he caught up with the bluesmen. By Clayton's calculation, this was the last week that he'd be able to find the bluesmen in Washington Square Park before they headed south. He'd never been to the South, but he knew the bluesmen preferred the southern climate to the cold that would soon drape over New York. Even though he was a kid, the bluesmen had treated Clayton like a musician, like a bluesman, although he was still growing into the spot with the band. He knew their rhythms and patterns. He'd play off of their riffs and not on top of them, unless they played a tidal wave of chords where everyone jammed together. He would wait to be waved in and not whine or plead for a solo. He was at his best when he saw himself as a musician, a bluesman. A woman's figure entered his periphery. He felt the heat of her stare on his cheek. If he walked away, she'd know he didn't belong underground. He rocked on his heels and waited for the train. At the other end of the platform stood some boys, two older, the other two not. He didn't turn his head to look at them. He knew better than to turn and gawk. Instead, he positioned himself so he could see who was on one end of the platform and who was on the other. They looked wild, feral. Definitely not like they were on their way to school, but more like fighting wolf pups, battling and nipping at one another for exercise, especially the younger two. At a glance, those two looked like twins, though it seemed friendly between them. Clayton knew that didn't mean they'd want him staring at him. He saw the tallest boy among them hold his hand up. The others stopped clowning or play fighting and quieted themselves. The tall one stood on the edge of the platform and cocked his ear toward the tracks. "Train!" he shouted. Clayton stepped closer to the platform's edge to peer down the tunnel. He saw no lights and heard no rumble. The boys ran to the very end of the platform and seemed to wait. Then Clayton heard the train rumble. Within seconds, he saw two bright lights barreling out of the dark. When the silver subway train roared into the station, the car before him opened and he stepped inside, found a seat, and looked dreamily ahead while the car took him on his adventure. The hard-staring woman took the seat directly across from him. "Look sharp, be cool." Cool Papa used to tell him when they were on the train heading toward the city. He took those words now as if Cool Papa were there beside him, keeping his secret. He cocked his head and looked sharp so no one would see a boy on the lam and would instead see a bluesman on his way to his gig. Gig, a Cool Papa word. If he looked like a bluesman on his way to some place in particular, no one would look at him the way the lady on the platform now sitting before him did. If only he had shades. Clayton did have his blues harp, and that was the main thing. A bluesman without an axe was just a man riding the train, and a kid without his axe couldn't claim to be a bluesman. Axe, another Cool Papa word. He had his axe, or what Jackrabbit Jones had called his union card. The way he worked on those square holes, he might as well be chopping wood. One day he'd get that blues bend just right. He'd make that harp start from a deep place and then turn around the corner until the bent note came up crying. He could feel it. He was that close. And he had Cool Papa's pork pie hat. He set it low on his head. When he took it off, he could smell Cool Papa's scent in the headband. The hard-staring lady didn't exactly shake her head, but Clayton could feel she wanted to. He stared past her when he felt like getting up, walking up to her, and asking her to please lean away so he could get a good look at the subway map. That would invite questions. Where are you going? Shouldn't you be in school? Boy, where is your mama? He stared off, better not to give himself away. The subway pulled into the next train station and the doors flew open. A smell, foul, sweet, and funky, caught his nose. His nostrils closed faster on their own than he could have told them to. A woman in rags pushed through the moving train with her shopping cart of treasures. She was a mound of soiled clothes, surrounded by knotted plastic bags, bundled newspapers, and a falling apart suitcase, stuffed with who knows what. She unloaded herself down into the corner seat of the train way over on the far end of the car, and her smell kicked like two mules. That was a lyric from one of Cool Papa Byrd's blues songs. You kick me, baby, worse than two mules can kick a man when he's down. He hadn't paid much attention to that part about two mules kicking when he clamped down on his blues harp and played while Cool Papa sang those words. But when the woman's funk caught him, he knew what it had to be. Kicked worse than two mules kicked. He covered his nose, but not his ears. She was singing. First he thought she was saying something, talking to no one, the way fidgety homeless people do. Then he heard a familiar sound, a tone and a rhythm. It was a church rhythm, wrapped up in the blues. He was tapping before he knew he was tapping, nodding before he knew he was nodding. It's gonna be all right, the woman moaned. It's gonna be all right. Clayton would give an amen to that if he were the amen type, but he agreed with the bad-smelling woman. It was going to be all right. He almost reached for the blues harp, but let it stay in his pocket. What if Cool Papa sent the hard-staring woman to let him know he still had his eye on him? What if Cool Papa sent the bad-smelling woman to let him know it would be all right? He wondered if spirits jumped from body to body because their old body was in the ground. Clayton didn't know for sure, but sitting in the train with one woman across from him and another at the other end of the car, he didn't rule out the possibility. So, that was the title chapter. Clayton Byrd goes underground. So he's in the underground subway station, heading into the city so he can play his blues harp. So we'll see what happens. All right, thanks.